We are back.
Hey,
Season
everybody.
2. This is Season 2 of Needed Conversations. We want to welcome you back to the table where we are having all the conversations that most people avoid, whether that be talking about marriage and love and dating, and even down to a little bit of politics in there, social issues, the conversations you like to sweep under the rug. Those are the conversations we really need to be having. And this is Season 2. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't already, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you are made aware anytime that we have new content that is released. Our podcast is released every Monday, so you can check that out and jump into the conversation with us on social media by following either one of us, commenting on YouTube. We're also on YouTube as well as all the streaming platforms where podcasts are listened to every single day. So welcome, Victoria. What's been going on in your life, in our life, over the last month and a half since Season 1 ended?
Well, it's been a wild ride, I think, for most of us out there dealing with a lot of things, with COVID-19 and the restrictions. And one of the things that I have not been sharing as much, about my personal life is that my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer, and it was the most aggressive form, which is glioblastoma. And he was diagnosed last summer. And we just started really seeing him deteriorate. I mean, he's a man of faith, and, he really jumped on like a plant-based diet. He was very strict, and overall, my parents have always eaten pretty healthy. Like, they don't go out to eat. They don't eat like fried foods. If it's anything resembling fried foods, everything's made, at home. A lot of this stuff is sourced from local farms, local people that actually make everything. So it was kind of devastating for us to hear that. And because of, his diagnosis, usually they say cancer starts somewhere in the body and it comes up to the brain because it's actually really hard to get to the brain. And so they were assuming that it could be environmental. And I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but basically my dad really started struggling the last 3 months before the end of the year. And we kind of recognized, and I think he was actually recognizing too, because he kind of started stepping away from this reality, like certain things that he would start doing and saying, almost kind of like settling things here on earth. And it was hard. It was hard to see that because it's like, a slow death that you see unveiled before a person, and I'm sure that it was scary for him because he was only 59 years old. He just turned 59. And I'm so glad that we made the trip happen to Florida, which, we have not gone on a trip together as a family because for some of you that don't know, there's 12 of us. And now we have spouses and children.
When did we go? We found out in
September.
about June, and then we went September.
It was for his birthday, but I think when we first initially organized it, we didn't realize that it was actually going to be around his birthday time. But we kind of recognized that this could be like our last trip with, our parents, and we could just, be together for a week just so we could see, how he's doing. And, we came back, and I feel like that it's just been a really wild roller coaster ride, of emotions and stress, like additional stress to whatever else was going on in the world, with election and politics and all. I mean, it was hard to kind of encapsulate all that while trying to stay sane and be a mother, be a wife. There's just so many things that kind of, I don't know, move you away from that. But my dad passed away January 1st. He wanted to step into the new year with us.
He wanted to say he made it through 2020, for sure.
Yeah, which is really, my dad is very symbolic. Like, if you've ever got to meet him, he's, he likes theology. He likes to debate. Sometimes he had his faults, but I think what, I am appreciative of that is that he had, a passion and a drive to pursue and to really like show people the truth, even if it came across a little domineering, I guess. But, there was like this sigh of relief, but now, you got to pick up the pieces and move on with life, because he's no longer here. So just being here, supporting mom, and just this new life of knowing that my or his grandchildren are no longer going to have a granddad, and even addressing that with our children and talking to them about eternity. And what really helped me during this phase is to really understand what is important. I think it doesn't really hit home until, something happens like this to your loved one. So that's kind of what we've been dealing with. And it's just, it's been a lot, but it also has been, a lot of lessons in between that's been learned.
I think 2020 was that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think being forced to slow down in a lot of ways helps us to recalibrate and recalculate what it is that is really important. And in a lot of ways, we got an extra dose of that by having Dad be diagnosed and then walk him through 6 months of transition, good moments, bad moments. So grateful for the time that we had with him in September when we went away for that trip. I think it was just something God ordained and God put together. I think it was evident, at least for me. I know that we are people of faith and we believe for miracles. And in fact, we have seen miracles with our own eyes. I've experienced miracles in my life. I've experienced miracles in the ministry world, in churches, doing missions work overseas. So it's not too far off for us to believe that God could perform a miracle if he wanted to in this age and in this reality. But God is sovereign in that he determines everybody's beginning and end point on earth. And I think that if we really dig deep down into it, it's not a lack of faith, but there comes a point where you realize and you settle it within your heart, this is this person's time to exit the world, that their assignment has been completed and it's their time to transition on and become a part of this cloud of witnesses who cheers us on and tells us, through the words that he left with us, that we can do it. We can carry on. We can spread the gospel. What he was so passionate about was telling people the truth. And it didn't matter the cost, the relational cost, the expense that it took to tell people the truth, the uncomfortable situations that it put people in. He was willing to make those sacrifices. And looking back now, I realized he knew somehow, subconsciously, that his time was limited with us, and he wanted to get as many of those conversations in as possible. And I had the honor and the privilege to be able to preach his funeral. And I'm just so grateful. The faith that it took for him to pick up, like Abraham, his 12 kids, from one country and move to another. Abraham heard a word from the Lord that said, move from your country, your people, your language. And this was a man who didn't have any children. Yet Victoria's father picked up from where he was with 12 children, and went into a land that he didn't know the language. He didn't know necessarily what he was going to do with the rest of his life. He just knew God was calling him to a land. And I'm so grateful because I would have never met Victoria. And that's just the legacy that he left for us, is to carry on with preaching the gospel of the kingdom. And really, he was one who challenged me personally on eliminating distractions, focusing on family. There's some things that he just would not participate in, and I had a lot of respect for that. And we as Christians sometimes, we have a challenge with the gray areas, the areas that the Bible isn't explicit about, the things that Paul said we could do that are permissible, but may not always be beneficial. He was very aware of those little nuances in life that just it wasn't worth it participating in, and he left that for me too. Turning off the TV. Making sure you're spending quality time with your children, not, investing so much in temporary things, but truly investing in things that really matter. And I'll always have that with me, that'll always be with me, that focus and what it really means to be well, because even though his body was failing, you can tell he was living between two worlds, and he was becoming more well in his soul as his body failed. And we've had to learn that too in 2020 with sickness all around us. Another update, since you guys have heard from us, is immediately after the funeral was over, we were in the midst of grief. This was about January 3rd. We contracted COVID-19.
And this is not our first rodeo. We actually had it in 2019, way before this whole thing was announced. And, you know, the question is like, how do you guys know? I don't ever get sick the way I got sick during that time, like fever, body aches.
That was at the beginning of 2020, the end of 2019.
And that was after, you know, that was way before we actually knew it. So this time around, I feel like it wasn't as hard. I know that some people are dealing with this and, you know, there are major issues that, you know, their body experiences. But, you know, that's another, I feel like it felt like a little bit of a setback because we really, you know, talked about vision in the previous episodes and season. And we really wanted to jump on board and like, okay, now we, you know, have to pick up the pieces with this whole dad situation and, you know, learn to live without him and how we can support mom, but also try to, you know, fulfill our goals and our vision. And then, you know, when you're not well, it's almost like debilitating because you can't think straight, you know, you're irritated, you're agitated more and you feel like you can't control certain things. And it almost forces you to rest again. Rest and really read your body and recognize what your body needs and whether it's sleep, whether it's, you know, you need to drink more water, you need to fill up on some good vitamins.
Yeah. And that's the powerful thing too about vision and really understanding the flow of your life's purpose is being able to take these moments that are somewhat unexpected and not allow those moments to completely derail you in your entire life and send you spiraling down this path. When you have vision, you really stand with sturdy legs in the midst of unexpected things that happen. And really, when I stepped into 2021, I was declaring this is a year of wisdom. This is a year of mentorship. This is a year of sonship. There's a lot of things that the Lord told me, but especially with everything going on politically and social media just becoming unbearable almost. It's a losing battle at times, and you want to speak out, you want to say your opinion on certain issues, but in the midst of everything going on with Dad having COVID, I've personally made the decision the last couple of weeks to step away from social media and use wisdom. One of the things I've learned when it comes to wisdom is that you should never make a decision and or make statements, especially if you're a public figure of any sorts, when you are in the midst of a crisis or a traumatic situation or a season of grief and mourning. So many people make long-term decisions when they're in the midst of temporary circumstances, and that will affect the entire trajectory of your life. You end up making stupid decisions, but wisdom tells you, take this moment, be silent, listen more than you talk. Take the moment to step back from outside of yourself and observe the situation from more of an aerial view. Wisdom tells you that whenever you're experiencing grief, you have to listen to your body. You have to rehydrate yourself. You have to make sure you're getting the right vitamins and nutrients from your food. You have to address these things because the fact of the matter is, if you aren't well, then you are unable to fulfill your purpose to the greatest extent. You know, your health, your mental health, your physical health are really determinants in whether or not you're going to fulfill the assignments that are before you. So especially when you're coming through seasons of grief, you have to mourn, you have to step away, but you also have to learn that wisdom dictates a season of silence and where you listen more than you talk. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I know some people may not think of it as a blessing in disguise, but COVID-19 has been for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons is that we are able to, just be with our families. I think we've always wanted to rush, be on this rushing thing, like going from work, going from activity to activity, hanging out with other people, instead of actually sitting down and even just being quiet with your own thoughts. And that's scary for a lot of people. They're like, no, I need people. But then I feel like if you don't ever address your personal issues, even, emotionally wise, they start manifesting, physically. If you have certain amounts of stress that you never address, it starts manifesting in sickness. Your immune system is suppressed, and you stop listening to yourself and to your body. I mean, we only have this one vehicle, and we have to take care of it so that we're able to do the work of the Lord, and, feel energized, feel good, not in the moment, but long term. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
for sure. And maybe you're out there and you've gone through a lot in this past season and you actually feel the pressure. It's January. Everybody feels pressure around this season to perform. But last year, God was speaking to me about the power of rest and being able to work from a place of rest in God and what that really means and how you can do more and accomplish more by doing less. And when I say doing less, I mean, removing the distractions, not spinning your wheels, but really being strategic with the things that you participate in, with the business endeavors you engage in, and learning the power of saying no. And so maybe you're at that point and you're like, I'm overwhelmed. I feel this pressure to perform in this season. I challenge you to stop and rest. Here's some signs that you have to look out for if you may not be aware that your health is out of whack, but there's probably underlying things that are happening that you're not really consciously aware of, right? You're spending too much time on social media. You could probably look at your phone and tell how many hours you scrolled on Instagram, Facebook, etc. And that's a really eye-opening experience. If there's one thing that Apple produced that was good, I think that was one of them. The ability to track how often you're on certain apps. Feeling disconnected from loved ones, right? Being in the same room or even the same house, but feeling like there's no sense of connection or conversation that goes anywhere beyond the surface level. That's an indication that you're probably harboring stress in a negative way. You're unable to complete projects in a reasonable time frame, that you feel like that you're scattered, that you have a lot of things that you've started, but not a lot of things that you've completed. That's an indication that your health is probably the next thing to go. And we've experienced this firsthand. We've walked through it in our lives. And even this last season, in the midst of trying times, having to stop and say, wait a minute, I'm not going to allow this to consume me or that to consume me, because then you could step into depression, right? Another thing is that you have repetitive cycles of little minor sicknesses. It seems like you always have a cold or a cough, or you always have indigestion. And these are just little signs that you're allowing stress to eat away at you. Another thing is your diet. You're unaware of what you're eating every single day, that it's just you grabbing food. There's no pre-planning involved. I know people hate the idea of planning food, but really to maintain your healthy lifestyle, you've got to put some thought into what you're eating, what you're consuming. If you're eating out a lot more, you're cooking a lot less, it's an indication that you're avoiding something. You're distracted from the reality of something. Something I've recognized is disturbed sleep. Maybe you've started snoring. Maybe this is me, and I've had to address this in this previous season. Slept many times on the couch trying to get that under wraps. Not because
I'm a
we're
very sensitive
challenged.
sleeper, so that's been a thing that I had to deal with for a long time. But I hear, not even like loud breathing also bothers me, but snoring I just can't do. No.
When you become a mom and dad, especially, you do become more
Even more
sensitive because your ear is always
heightened.
out for a child.
Yeah, somebody messaged you and said, "Does the phantom crying ever stop?"
Right. And really, it doesn't. It becomes into another phantom. And until your children, I think, become grown and out of the house. And even then, I can't say that my mom and dad stop thinking about us or are concerned about us. They definitely are. There's definitely more freedom, but but for me, I've had to recognize that there's a reason why I'm more restless at night, why I'm unable to unplug and just have to address what are the stresses that I'm carrying that I shouldn't be carrying. What do I need to give to God, right? How can I reset my body? And it's not about, I've done diet after diet, and I'm not about that life anymore. But it's about consecrating yourself. I think consecrations are very good. Starting prayer walks, getting outside of the house. We're just letting you in on some of the things that we're adopting in this season of coming through grief and sickness, and how we're still able to maintain our focus and our vision. In the midst of all of this, we've started a new business. Mm-hmm. So we're managing that. And that's a business outside of the world of authoring and blogging and some of the other things that we've done in the past. This is a completely different industry, which hopefully will be letting you guys kind of in on that journey in the months to come. We're very excited about it. But in order to do these things, we've had to address our routines. We've had to recharge our vitamin schedule. What are some of the things that we're taking? We're just being transparent here for.
Well, I personally have tested a lot of brands, and I personally recommend 2 of them. This is not sponsored. They don't pay me to say any of this. I have said this even on my blog. My personal favorite brand is by Mega Foods. You can find them at Whole Foods or at pureformulas.com. It's another vitamin shop that you can just order online without having to go anywhere. But I feel great after taking those because they're actually kosher and they're like non-GMO. That's something that you really have to watch out for when it comes to vitamins because it's a huge market. And so some of them are not quality vitamins. You actually are just pumping yourself full of heavy metals, which can give you headaches and other problems. So I would personally recommend Mega Foods. And there's also another brand called Country Life. But the biggest thing that you need to do is, not try to take whatever somebody else is taking. I think it depends on your diet as far as what you eat. So we are vegetarians. So there's specific vitamins that we're not getting that we need to supplement with. So I would definitely recommend everybody take a multivitamin. I think that's important because we're living in a fast-paced society where we are not getting the nutrients that we need. And then being more conscious about eating, more green leafy vegetables and fruits versus a lot of the processed foods. And then, figuring out what your diet is and maybe even go into one of these shops. They actually draw blood for you and they can backtrack your nutrient levels for the past 6 months. And that's one thing that we want to do just so that your body over time doesn't overcompensate for a specific thing. One thing that I asked one of the physicians, in my dad's case, because his symptoms came on so quickly, I was wondering, how come we did not know about this before? And he said, your body is incredible. Like, it actually overcompensates for a long time until it gets tired. And then you start seeing a lot of symptoms. So that's my personal suggestion. I share a lot of that on my Instagram as well. And, some of the personal vitamins that we supplement with because of our diet. So
yeah, and we do eat some fish, like wild-caught salmon, those kind of things, but mostly we try to stay away from the meat. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I think that if you're going to eat meat, definitely eat grass-fed.
Locally, if you can source them locally. This is one thing I love, that there are, if you look up online, you can find local farms that actually you can buy from, even meat-wise, and that's the best place, to buy your local stuff if you're going to eat meats.
Yes, for sure. The other thing that I would say is because of COVID-19, we've increased our level of vitamin D, zinc, What was some of the other
The
ones
turmeric, which
Yeah, we
is
started taking
for
turmeric as well.
it's anti-inflammatory, but I also buy it in the actual sprinkle form. You can throw it in your shakes. You can actually mix it into some warm water with lemon and local honey. For those of you who don't know, like eating honey from somewhere else doesn't really do you any good. So be sure to source it locally because the bees actually create it, and they actually help to construct it in such a way where whatever the area is dealing with, it actually helps your
Because
immune
they're
system.
pollinating based on your specific area. So the pollen, the germs, when pollen season comes around, a lot of people start getting the allergies and stuff going on. But eating that local honey will kind of help build your immune system against that year's strain of pollen.
Hmm.
So even if there is a lot of pollen around, you've kind of already, it's almost like,
Like
you know,
like an antigen, or
yeah.
like yeah, it helps your immune system. But you want to source that locally because it kind of
Getting the
helps with
little
whatever going
bottles
on.
of stuff. Most of the time, it comes from China. A lot of honey
It's
does,
actually mixed with maple syrup.
and there's a lot of things that you don't know. But
Yeah.
local honey, for sure, you're going to pay a little bit more for it, but it's good. One of the mixtures that we often do is the local honey, ginger, the actual ginger root that you cut up,
Hmm.
as well
Chop it up in
as
small
yeah,
pieces.
and then you put lemons in
Yep.
there as well. You can actually slice and put the lemons in there. Or you can do oranges as well, and then you use a couple of spoonfuls of that and some hot water, and it almost creates like a tea type substance.
Hmm.
But it's really good, helps with sore throats, all of that. We've been intentional about our vitamins, but we've also been intentional about getting outside more,
Hmm.
taking walks with the children, even with COVID-19, staying away from people. We've been isolated for the last 2 weeks. So we've done that. My hair's grown out. I definitely need a haircut, but I'm being mindful, even though we're no longer contagious. But getting outside, staying away from people, but walking around in your neighborhood, keeping your distance for sure. We've also had taken the opportunity to have some intentional conversations, really processing through some of what we've experienced over the last 3 or 4 months with one another. And like I say in my book, I Love You More, Most, and Forever, when it comes to marriage, whenever you experience major transitions like the loss of a loved one, transitions in your job or career, you have to go back to the outer court and rediscover one another spiritually, go back into the inner court, talk about some of the new routines you want to establish, how you want to educate, how can we communicate better in this season, and then recultivate that intimacy. So we're right in the midst of that. Knowing that we've transitioned, that pushes us back to the outer court on that season of rediscovery. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean we've kind of experienced something similar, when we lost our first child, a miscarriage, and we did talk about that. And I do remember being in a really deep hole during that time. I can't say that this is the same, because this is a person that is a part of me, and he really left an imprint on my life. So it's definitely different, and it does change a person. I think sometimes we step into marriage thinking like, oh, I like this person the way they are and they're not going to change, we're going to keep everything the same. But that's a lie. That's a lie.
Yeah.
And you can't live in the past. You know what I mean? You have to always push towards the future. Sometimes we want to like always bring back the dating phase, like how nice it felt, how infatuated we are. But honestly, I'm grateful for where we are because we're more mature. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that the people that are experiencing the dating or the engaged phase right now, I always try to, when I do talk to people like that, I say, enjoy it. Enjoy your journey because I remember that phase. And if somebody tells you, like, oh, you just wait, I don't ever receive that. I always reject those thoughts. I always reject those opinions, even if I like murmur it under my breath. I'm like, don't let other people's perspective or other people's experience be your experience. Because if you accept it, it will become your experience. But you just want to enjoy the journey. And like you said, really, be intentional about reeling back. And sometimes we get in a rut and sometimes we do, start scrolling through social media and really get caught up doing other things. and that fogs our mind more. We start distancing, even though we are presently with our children or presently with our spouse. You can sense that distance.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's again just being intentional about and whenever you go through a transition in seasons, that you go back to the outer court. And we're speaking to married people out there. I think you can build a monument and almost an idol of even that dating season. And you constantly compare, well, if only it was like this. Well, it's not like that. You're parents now. It's not like that. You have grown. You're a different person. So you can never return to that place, that first phase of dating and engagement, etc. You have to look and say, how can we discover ourselves, each other, in a new way? Get to know you now that you've had these experiences, and I want to know more about you. It's a learning. It's the school of Victoria is what I'm going through every single season of our lives. It's like I'm elevated. Don't go back to ninth grade. Now we're in 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. And when it comes to this school, you never quite graduate. It's always like there's more to learn. We're so exhaustive as individuals. There's so much about us that we ourselves have yet to unlock and discover about ourselves, much less discover about our spouse. So these are some of the things, and we hope this is helping you out there. Maybe you're dealing with a transition, a seasonal transition. In many ways, January 1 doesn't mean for us what it means for a lot of people. We kind of go by the Jewish New Year, September-ish time period, and we start writing our vision for the new year around October, and we start jumping into it. In fact, I crossed some of my 2021 vision goals off of the list before we even stepped really into the first week of January. And that felt good. And in a lot of ways, I don't feel the pressure that everybody else does to perform just because it's January 1. It's no, I'm in the midst of a grind that God has instigated, not me. Other things that we're doing, of course, we said social media detoxing, changing the sounds in your homes. We started putting on worship music. In the morning, I start putting on worship music before I get dressed and as I'm showering, and throughout the day, even while the kids are napping. One of the things that I love that Victoria does is she puts on worship music and Christian music and lets it kind of saturate through the house while the kids are sleeping. I love that. It definitely affects things and it changes things for the better. Environment is so important. And one of the last things I want to say here is we've took to journaling more. We've tried to let our creative outlets flow. We started doing some drawing, some coloring, some artistic outlets. That really helps. And then taking some mini courses. I myself have started taking several little mini courses and just trying to make sure that I'm growing at all times. John and Lisa Bevere have a lot of great courses that they offer, and really they're free. You can download that. This is just a plug. I don't know them personally, but I love what they're doing. Messengers X is an app you can download today, and I encourage you to do so. Also, I want you to go to my website and check out what I've got coming up. We have some projects that we're releasing, but if you go to ryancoleempowerment.com, there's a little pre-sign up that you can enroll in a mini course that I'm going to be releasing on purpose. How to discover your purpose, understand this abstract concept of purpose, and how you can live a more fulfilled life by understanding God's will for your life, understanding when God has given you an assignment, how to navigate that assignment, and really looking to people in the Bible and saying, how did they discover what their quote-unquote purpose was? And there's a lot of amazing tools and strategies I'm going to be giving you. You want to be the first to sign up for it. So go to my website. There's a pre-enrollment right now, but we'll be releasing sometime in February. I'll let you know the specific date, but you can go and sign up on that waiting list and make a deposit now so that you can be the first enrolled to get this information. It's going to be exciting. Yeah. In fact, we're going to roll into that episode where we're going to be talking next week about purpose and what it really means. We're in a world where purpose, success, these terms are kind of thrown around very loosely, and everybody likes to think that they know, oh, I know what that means, but really those terms are very ambiguous. Let's talk about that in the next episode. But thanks for being with us for this first episode of season 2 of Needed Conversations. It's been great opening up and letting you know what's been going on in our lives and some of the strategies we use to transition well. We hope that that's helped you today. So God bless you.
Yes, we'll see you guys next time.
See you next week.